Welcome to HCAM series, all about getting to know the fascinating people who have dedicated themselves to make Hopkinton the place that it is today. We'll learn about their jobs and projects they are working on, but more importantly, we'll learn about who they are, their hobbies and interests, and why they do what they do. I'm Sidhi Dhanda, and this is Out on the Town. Today I'm here with Hopkinton's town clerk, Degan. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for making the time.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to do it.
So I know that you grew up in Hopkinton and you graduated from the high school. You're a fellow Hiller.
Yep.
So how was your experience in the high school?
So I growing up in Hopkinton, loved every second of it because it was it was a place where it felt like you were in a community. You always had kind of your classmates who were like family. You were going through all this together from the very beginning. So, I mean, I had some people who I had in class with me from kindergarten all the way through, and you make some friends who are lifetime and others who you see occasionally, usually around holidays and stuff like that. But, the connections that I think are still the funniest to me are now being in this position, the teachers who haven't retired yet, who I still see, and now I have a completely different relationship with than I did when I was in high school. So, for instance, my guidance counselor was Mr. Bishop, who is now the principal. So just an example of how much things change.
Well, that's really funny. So now you work with him in a completely different role.
Yes, exactly.
So did you think that you'd be living and working in the same community that you grew up in?
No, if you had asked me, I would have no idea. I wasn't like some people were like, I can't get out of Hopkinton fast enough. It's so quiet. Nothing's happening. I kind of looked at it as, well, yeah, there's nothing happening, but you're around all this stuff. There's so much going on that's under the surface. And I didn't think I was going to end up living and working here. I was all over the place for a little while, either right around college or just right after. But then it was kind of when I decided I wanted to refocus that it brought me back to town, and then it just kind of took a life of its own.
So what did young Connor Degan think he'd be doing for a living?
Different careers for different stages of my life. My mother often remarks that when I was very little, I would put on a blazer and I'd say, I'm going to be president one day. But I think for me, I always just wanted to find something that I'd do that would help people and support people. I wasn't looking for some sort of big paying type job. I wanted to have an impact in the world around me. And so I think that's kind of what ended up leading me into public service in the end.
So how did you decide to volunteer? Because I know you initially were a volunteer here for your predecessor.
Yep.
How did you decide town clerk was where you wanted to volunteer?
So initially it was I had just gotten off of a job because I was in kind of the more politics side of it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. How do I kind of refocus it and find what I want to do? And when I came back home to kind of figure that out, I had heard from a neighbor that I grew up knowing for my time in town my whole life. And she was like, oh, the clerk's actually looking for someone to help out. And I'm like, oh, well, that would be a good way to see if maybe I want to do something in local government. And so I went and I asked and ended up being there for about 10 or 11 months before she was ready to retire. And then it was like, well, I was looking and I hadn't really given it too much thought before. And I'm like, I don't know how many other people are really ready to run for this or able to run for this right now. And so I kind of started to put out my feelers about it, and people were receptive to the idea. And so I thought maybe I actually have a shot of running for this after all, and I went for it from there and tried to make as many community connections as I could so that I could really build it. I didn't want it to just be, I want to get this. I wanted to really earn it and make those connections and make people want me to be there.
What was it like running your first election at such a young age too?
It was so eye-opening and so stressful and crazy every step of the way, but it was so much fun because you got to meet so many people on so many different levels. It was so fun to make connections with people who didn't really know me, And so I got to have this whole chance to have a sit down and talk with people and get to know them and the things that were concerning them in the community. It was just so special to get those connections in. And then it just kind of took on from there. And I was so lucky to have my family who was so supportive and so many friends who supported me too, even when it came to things like holding signs for me. But, and they'll tell you too, up until the moment the results were read, I was still thinking, oh no, I might still lose this. I need to brace myself for the impact. And I actually had a huge margin. And they're like, why were you even worrying, Connor? It's like, because I don't want to like go in thinking that I'm going to win. Then I don't really deserve it if I just think, oh, it should just be given to me. So, yeah.
Was like political service, political engagement, civil engagement, was that a big part of how you were raised?
Yeah, so I mean, for not to the same degree that I got into it. I've always found politics, government to be fascinating. But my parents, when I was growing up, they actually were, my mother was very involved in making sure that kind of, this was our home. When they moved here, they wanted to become a part of this community. And I still remember one time there was a discussion on changing the name of our street growing up. And my mother was there at a select board meeting, and we were watching her on HCAM at the time as she was explaining to them why they shouldn't change the name of the street. And it was stuff like that I saw as, how much of an impact people can have, because then the select board ended up making a compromise rather than just going ahead and changing the street as requested. And I saw how much that impact can be made, and I saw that multiple times then over the course of seeing my parents interact with town government.
It's pretty interesting. I love that you saw your mom have like an impact on the community. Now you get to do the same.
Yep.
So as town clerk, I know that's a very like broad job. You have a lot of different roles. Do you want to give us like a quick overview of like what you kind of like day to day looks like?
The best part about being town clerk is that day to day is never the same. Because we do a whole lot of everything, and I like to say that whenever the state can't figure out who in the town should be doing a job, they just give it to the clerk and say, you can do it. It's like, oh, we don't know who should be doing raffle permit, so we'll give that to the town clerk. And flammable storage, let's go ahead and give that registration to the clerk. So, I mean, it can be a lot of doing dog licenses day to day. Sometimes it's getting people's business certificates all set. And then there's always the looking at making sure people have access to records, including birth records and death records, a lot of genealogy research, but also people coming in and getting their marriage licenses. And you get these fun moments, and I like to say we see people at every point in their lives. We see people when they're coming in to get married. We see them back here for their first child to pick up their birth certificates. And we see them when they lose a loved one and we're issuing the death certificate, but we're having these conversations with them, and it's maintaining that sense of community by having our office be that point of contact. Not even mentioning the elections, stuff that occurs too, because there's so much prep that goes into that every year. And everyone forgets that there's those local elections too that happen every year.
So what is some of that prep? Because I know we've talked about that before, but like, what is that? What do you get to do for that?
So it starts almost, probably a month or so after the last one goes, because then we're starting to get ready with all the budgeting process all over again as we get ready for town meeting. But even right now, we're getting ready to do all kinds of additional training to see what additional prep we need to do for the upcoming presidential primary. So it never stops, and it's always making sure that we're keeping ourselves educated as to what is going on with new laws that are always changing, and we're keeping up contact with the state and with neighboring clerks to make sure that we're keeping at the cutting edge of how we can serve the community with it. But then as we start to get closer, it's for local elections where we're running the show, we're making sure ballots are printed, machines are coded, election workers are scheduled, and we have to be ready for all of that and anything else that could possibly go wrong. It's scheduling all the things like machine tests, because we need to make sure that machine tests are done in a period where it has public access so that people can see these machines are reading exactly what they're supposed to read off of the ballots. Because a lot of what we do is trying to make sure that everything that we've done is foolproof and works properly. And it's one of the benefits too with, as much as having paper ballots can seem and can be wasteful at times, it's wonderful having that audit trail that you can always have. And so a lot of it is going into building that audit trail before you get to the end of it all.
Makes a lot of sense. So what's your favorite part of your work? Because you mentioned you have like a broad range of responsibilities. You can see a lot of different moments. What's your favorite part?
I'll give two. It's a little bit of a tie. I do love it when people bring in their adorable new puppies for dog licenses, because some people bring them in, and that is a lot of fun. But I'm a justice of the peace as well. And so I have people who come in, they get their marriage certificates all set, and they'll ask if I can perform the wedding ceremony. And it's just so special to be a part of someone's life like that. It's such an intimate moment in a family's life. And it could be a small little one here at town hall, or it could be at their home, or it could be at a venue. And it's just so much fun. And it's just, you really can feel it with some couples. You can just feel the connection between them. And nothing can beat the feeling that you get as being a part of that.
So I have a question for you. I know you got married while you were a town clerk.
Yep.
So did you have to issue your own marriage certificate?
No, because that would be a conflict of interest. So I actually had to have a staff member who could do that and give the oaths and all that. They were the one who issued it and made sure I filled out the paperwork correctly, and they signed off that they were the ones who completed all of that, and they were the ones who had to sign off to issue it and everything else. So it was adding a couple of extra steps. But fortunately, I did everything right, because otherwise I would have never lived it down if I made any mistakes on my own applications.
That's funny. So what's your favorite project or initiative you worked on as town clerk?
The first thing that comes to mind, so I'll go with that. I'm going to go with my knee-jerk reaction. It was actually trying to do some outreach when it was before COVID. We were going through and trying to find ways to increase awareness of how elections work. And we actually went over to Hopkins, and we had a mock election where students were able to vote on a buddy bench design for the playground. And I had done one of those elections with my predecessor while I was still volunteering for Elmwood. And so then it was a chance to do it for Hopkins now. And that was really fun for me, because I was also one of the first classes to go to Hopkins when it was built too. And so I got to then kind of leave that little bit of a mark there, and I brought my old ballot box, because we have like an old antique manual hand crank ballot box that when you put the ballots in, it dings to show that the vote was counted, and a little clicker moves up to show you have one extra ballot in there. And that one was a lot of fun. It meant a lot to the kids who were involved in helping with it too.
So you actually brought in the box and you had students complete like a paper ballot and put it in the machine?
Yep. So we made handmade ballots. I did it with a Girl Scout troop that wanted to work on civic engagement as well. And so we made all these ballots. We had options for different designs, and you'd fill in the bubble and you put it through, and then we hand counted all of the ballots, and it was that was a lot of fun.
That's pretty cool. So when you're not working, what is something you like to do for fun? Because I know like your job sounds pretty hectic at times.
It is. And so I definitely am someone who I like to chill a bit when I have my time off. I like to get out into nature and get away from everything, whether it be going to state parks or going to on hikes. I will go with my wife and my dog, and that's something I really like to do. But I'm also, as much as it's strange sometimes, I'm very much a people person. I still want to be around people. So I like to do things where even if it's like I don't know any of the people, it's like I can talk with a stranger and they might have no clue who I am. It doesn't matter. I'm just talking with people. They could be neighbors. They could be, random folks that I met at some type of event or something. It's just a lot of fun. And then one other thing I definitely like to do, my wife and I like to do together, is we love traveling, which is actually, just kind of injecting ourselves into other cultures and kind of seeing what life is like in another world almost. And it's also one of the things that's been so fun about, like, as Hopkinton has become more diverse, you get more tastes of all of that from people bringing their own cultures here as well. And so it's kind of like you don't need to go as far to be able to experience it too, which has been fun.
Where was the last place you guys traveled to?
The last place we did was Mexico.
Ooh, wow.
And we are coming up on Italy.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So we've done Italy before, but not since before the pandemic. So we're looking forward to going back. I wanted to go to Ireland again, but I acquiesced to my wife saying Italy. I'm like, oh, if I have to, we have to do Italy. I guess we will.
What is something most local residents wouldn't know about you?
I don't know. I like to say I'm an open book. I feel like there's probably some people wouldn't know. Like, one of my additional little hobbies that I like to do is I'm an avid lover of barbecue. So I have like a Texas style smoker in my backyard that I like to load up. It's wood burning, and I'll go over to arenas and I'll get myself like a full brisket, like 16 pounds, and I'll smoke it for like 18 hours out on the grill.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And so have you been doing that all summer?
No, I haven't had much chance this summer. It's been so busy, and then it's either been like ridiculous heat or it's been pouring rain. And so I haven't had much of a chance. I'm hoping maybe even this weekend. I'm trying to see how the weather's looking for the weekend.
Does it have to be like a specific weather, or like do you like prefer it in a specific weather?
I prefer it in a specific weather. I love doing it in the fall though too, because then it's like it's cool. So it doesn't, you're not like sweating like crazy standing over this hot smoker. You're just kind of like, oh, it's balancing. Everything's working out on this one. You're kind of near the fire the whole time, but it's still going and it's still kind of cool and dry, and it's not pouring rain right now.
No, so that sounds like a lot of fun. That also sounds very tasty.
We have a good time with it. And then I'm never someone who likes to, some people do it and they like to wrap it all up and put it away. And personally, I like to share it with as many people as I possibly can. So when I'm smoking something, I'm like, I'm going to be making this, and I start telling people. So it's like, come over and get some, or I'll bring like a big Tupperware of it into the office, and I'll be like, okay, do you want some? It's like, here you go.
I'm sure that makes you pretty popular around here.
Oh, yeah, with some people, for sure. And then it started a little contest at one point, and some other people, it was, pre-pandemic, and I brought some stuff in, and other people were like, you smoke stuff on the weekends too? And then they're bringing in stuff that they made that weekend, and we're comparing and contrasting our own recipes, and so that made it interesting. That really made it interesting.
Well, Connor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and be on the show. We appreciate all that you do for Hopkinton.
No, and thank you for giving these spotlights, because I was reading and watching some of the other ones you did, and it's so awesome to give these spotlights to the people who are behind the scenes doing all this stuff in town.
Thank you.